Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Good morning to you. Unless, of course, you're a Penn State alum, it is not a good morning, and there is no happy in the valley. Wow. Well, they weren't kidding when they said unprecedented penalties and significant penalties. I'm going to assume that most of you know what Penn State now knows. The fallout from the NCAA, and it's pretty breathtaking. In fact, if you look at it, it's far worse than if they had simply been given the so-called death penalty for a year, because as I look at these, it appears that the program is essentially in kind of a receivership for 5 years. They can't make a move. They've got I don't know how they're going to recruit anybody. The lack of scholarships, not to mention the fact that any aspiring young football player doesn't want to go to a school where he's never going to see a bowl game. So this really does. I think it's great. I think it's a great punishment in terms of if Penn State is ever going to get its head straightened out, the proper balance of football and academics and what that land-grant university was about at its founding. If they look at the mission statement, it has nothing to do with football. It's heavy, and it will hurt a lot of people who had nothing to do with any of this, but that's invariably what happens when an institution does wrong. You can't be terribly specific in who gets harmed in any punitive action that is taken against it. So, for those of you who maybe didn't hear, there's a $60 million fine levied against the university, which will be used to help victims, I guess, of child abuse. There is a ban on attendance at any bowl game for 4 years. There is a reduction in scholarships from 25 to 15, I believe, for a 4-year period. All the wins that Penn State football toted up from 1998 to the present are wiped out. And they arrived at that 1998 date from the fact that that was the first reported sexual abuse. That's when they knew something was awry and when they proceeded to do nothing about it. So 98 to 2001, which takes away from Paterno the winningest coach trophy. That's over. Penn State is on a 5-year probationary period with the potential of, if any false step occurs, the NCAA coming right back in and knocking them again. I mean, it's heavy. Closing the program for a year would have been a much easier thing to deal with. This is awesome. I don't know. I think it seems like they got it about right, if you ask me. And no one is, but I'm asking you what you might think. The kind of responses that are popping up, of course, in this day and age of social media, some of them are absolutely breathtaking. And there's clearly a lot of anger among some Penn State alums and Penn State students. And this quote, which just blew me away, I read in USA Today this morning, and it's from one Anthony Lubrano, who is on the board of trustees at Penn State. And he's not one of those who was on the board when all this stuff happened. He's one of the newly elected people who came onto the board. And if this is what the newly elected board members are like, God help Penn State. They still don't get it. Listen to this quote from the newly elected member of the Board of Trustees of Penn State. Quote, "I am so frustrated as a trustee. It's really disheartening." This is before he's hearing what's going to happen. "I am hearing the same things the news media are. It's unforgivable that Mark Emmert," this is the head of the NAACP, the NCAA, that Mark Emmert feels he needs to make an example. If what is being reported is correct, Joe Paterno is not responsible for pedophilia in America. Louis Freeh reached an erroneous conclusion. That's a newly elected board member at Penn State. This is why I say I don't know that anybody is really getting it there. They might know sort of what's expected of them, so certain people are saying the right things and making, the right kinds of moves. This guy, obviously speaking from his heart, tells you an awful lot. Here's another. Michael Robinson, who was a former football player, 2005 Big Ten title. Quote, "I know the NCAA felt like it had to do something, but Jerry Sandusky and this scandal, it gave us no competitive advantage, We had no idea. The NCAA, when it talks about docking scholarships and bowls and wins or whatever, the death penalty, I look at it as if you were doing something to create a competitive advantage. That wasn't the case here. So here's somebody who doesn't think they should. Nothing that happened was done so that we would be a better football team. And you could argue that that is true. And there was a tweet from a former member of the team saying, you mean I lost every football game I ever played in? Look, no, you didn't. And you didn't. It just ain't going to be, marked down that way. I wonder if 3-4 years is enough to change a culture. Probably not. I'm thinking of when the Jews got out of Egypt. Moses leading the Jews out of Egypt to the promised land. But the Jews that he led out, the slaves, the Jewish slaves, they never saw the promised land. No, they had to wander around in the desert for 40 years. And why? Well, because the sense is that they had a culture, a mindset of servitude. They could not possibly be the first to set up their own land. They had no sense of it. You needed a generation to die off, maybe 2 generations to die off. You needed to remove yourself that much from that culture that handicapped them before they could see the promised land. I'm not generally given to biblical metaphor, but I think that's true here too. If in fact college education is a 4-year college education, maybe they're looking at that as generational in a way, so that everybody who's at Penn State now, most of them will be gone when the program is able to again compete on the same level as other schools. But I don't think you're going to change it's in the blood. It's in more than the school. It is the lifeblood of that entire area. And it's quite an economic hit to that area as well. But you make deals with the devil. You make these Faustian bargains. And there's a payback somewhere. Here it is. You can moan and groan about it till you're blue in the face, but here it is. If you were to go to Beaver Stadium today, you would see a sign attached to the fence there at Gate A, and it says this: Penn State versus the world. We love you, football players. See, that's the kind of thing. There's a defensiveness there now, and because the whole community at Penn State feels so attacked, so vilified, that there tends to be this, and I understand that too, circling of wagons and hardening of hearts and closing of ears, and just a sense that they now feel they're the victim. So after Paterno's statue was ignominiously, the pictures of that are amazing, with this blue quilted moving blanket stuck over his head, but his hand still, up in the air saying number 1, and just being humiliatingly carted away. After that was gone, hundreds of people have been stopping by the Paterno house, where a mini shrine now exists on the front lawn, with roses and posters and candles. And the people doing that are the people who, totally have drunk the Kool-Aid, and they really are part of this JoePa cult and can't let go. There's so many interesting tableaus of human behavior on display as a result of this. But I wonder how many people are capable of changing their hearts and their minds and understanding that this is actually an opportunity for a huge course correction that will ultimately benefit Penn State. I don't think they believe that at this point. Well, if anybody has anything they want to say about it, feel free. Of course, I'm not even looking at my mail. And share your thoughts with me. You can also do it at the phone, by phone, I believe is the way to say that, at 412-316-3381. Margaret writes, Penn State is stuck in the 50s. Yeah. It's stuck. There's no doubt about it. And I really think it's going to take a long time to get unstuck. And let's be clear, there are other universities that are as stuck in the same kind of mindset, where football rules, we can start naming names. And there are other universities that want to be schools where football reigns, because there's money in that pigskin. I don't know. Money corrupts, doesn't it? The whole culture is so corrupted. But I am, most of everything I've read or seen about this, I'm most blown away by that quote from the newly elected Penn State trustee. Because if that is in any way indicative of the mindset of the trustees currently, the newer ones, not the old guard, the new ones, then Penn State's going to have a hard time learning what it needs to learn from this extraordinary humiliation. All right, I'm going to take a break. Did I say hello? Hello. It's July 23rd, 2012. And it's a Monday, which is always a bit daunting, I know. But we can do it. No guest today, just you and me for about another 45 minutes. We'll be back.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen Live after this.
Laser Hair and Skin Center has been providing professional, affordable services for over 10 years. Now they're proud to exclusively offer RegenLite acne treatment. RegenLite is an FDA-approved, non-invasive drug, chemical, and pain-free treatment of all grades of acne. With RegenLite, you will experience a 50% improvement in less than 2 weeks, with lasting improvement for up to 12 weeks. Call the Laser Hair and Skin Center today at 412-373-1700 and receive $100 off your first session. Or go to mylaserhair.com for more information and to see their full line of services. The Laser Hair and Skin Center. Go to birdbargains.com for great deals on tickets to the Science Center, the History Museum, Carnegie Museums, and some of the best restaurants in Pittsburgh. During the month of July, spend $50 on Berg Bargains merchandise and receive a $10 gift certificate to Buca di Beppo. birdbargains.com. Local deals, local merchants. birdbargains.com.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we've got a pep talk that can motivate you.
Sometimes things don't always turn out the way you want them to.
You can improve your future. Now get your game face on and take the first step towards a better life. Hurry up! Don't make me repeat myself.
Whatever level of motivation you need, we've got a pep talk for you. Call 1-877-38-YOUR-GED or visit yourged.org for your pep talk and for free classes in your area. GED is a registered trademark of the American Council on Education. Brought to you by Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
Margaret also points out that Penn State also had a pretty outrageous thing that happened in their women's basketball program not too long ago, and it did not get anywhere near the publicity for many, obvious reasons. One, it was women's sport. Two, who cares about Penn State women's basketball? But there, the coach was just a monster, a homophobic tyrant who harassed her players, who was on constant guard to catch any lesbians who might be on the team and to knock them off, to make life unbearable for them. A lot of, there were some lesbians on the team, I'm sure. There were also heterosexuals who she thought were lesbians, who eventually, it was one of those young women who fought back legally. Throughout that entire disgusting thing that went on for years, Paterno supported her as well, as did the Board of Trustees. Totally supported her. I can't remember. She finally, lost. It was a court of law that finally yanked the rug out from under her, and she exited the program. But this circling of wagons around them that is, part of their circle, is, again, it's kind of a knee-jerk institutional response, and there are many instances, and you see it, where Penn State athletics, it wasn't just this, where there were little red flags that this kind of thing, that the board was willing to look the other way, and that the athletic program had more power at this university than the administration did, and then the board did. And when you end up with a topsy-turvy chain of command like that, you're going to have trouble. And this is what happened. New York Times business section has a different kind of sidebar issue on this. It's a story about what they call like the most unfortunately scheduled bad timing release of a book ever. And that's the biography of Joe Paterno, which was to be a huge blockbuster of a book coming after his career. They were going to have it come out at the beginning of the season, when it would be the first time that the season started without Joe Paterno. This is the one written by a former Sports Illustrated reporter who had the full cooperation of Joe Paterno and his family, and it was originally going to be called, I forget what, there was some fancy-dancy name, and even that name they decided they better jettison, that it didn't work anymore. So the book now is just to be called Paterno. Meanwhile, bookstores have been telling Simon & Schuster, the publisher, we don't want to even buy a single copy of this crap. We don't want it. Here's a bookseller, Joseph Fox Bookshop in Philadelphia. I don't want it on my shelf. It's distasteful, and it's not up to date. I'm sure there's a lot of college football fans who want to read about the greatest coach of all time, but it's not something I want to have in my store. And because of the moves today by the NCAA, he no longer is, frankly, the winningest coach, the greatest coach of all time. So there had been the writer was supposed to be all over the airwaves this summer touting the book. Nobody wants to deal with it. Sports Illustrated was given the first look at the book and was told that it could run an excerpt. Sports Illustrated said, no thanks, we don't want it. GQ took it, and in its September issue, it will run excerpts from the book. But Sports Illustrated, as I said, turned it down. So what was to be a blockbuster is a total fizzle. I would imagine if you're a Penn State, proud Penn State alum, that you're probably in a state of shock. And if you look at what people are tweeting and stuff, they're saying, God, so how much will tuition go up now? If they've got to cover $60 million, which is that's what the NCAA figures that Penn State takes in a year from its football program. That's the money it generates. They want them to keep the program going, get your $60 million, and you turn it over to us. Turn it over to where I don't know how they actually worked it out. By the way, Penn State signed off on all this. It's not appealing anything. It's just taking it on the chin and trying to move on. I would argue that that's a smart thing for the administration to have done. Obviously, all the football players who are on the team who went to Penn State with the assumption that they were going to one of the greatest football programs in the country might want to get the hell out of there now because they're on a tainted team that will not see any bowl action. So those players are all immediately, right now, today, there's agents on the phone right now, believe me. They're all, the calls are going from Happy Valley out to God knows where, and the other way around, from football programs wanting to snag some of the players at Penn State. So there's some serious bargaining going on right now because the NCAA did give all those players the ability to transfer immediately and to play immediately at another school. So what that team's going to look like when it trots out onto the field this year is a great deal different than it was looking like just yesterday or today. Ansel writes, an observation as I watch the NCAA announcements, the sanctions are intended to force Penn State to rebalance their priorities. The NCAA criticized Penn State for developing a culture that put too much emphasis on athletics, particularly football. But it seems to me that this is largely hypocritical on the part of the NCAA. The NCAA has been just as guilty as any organization crafting a bowl structure and bowl revenue system that would make it easy for university athletics to fall out of balance. Not going to argue with it. Gigi writes, I think the NCAA sanctions are reasonable along with the conditions they've imposed. I think it strikes a good balance of punitive measures, attempt at culture change, and not excessively impacting innocent students. The quote you provided by the newly elected trustee is enough to make one wonder, though, if anything can possibly change. What an arrested development culture. Michael writes, not to take away from the seriousness of the nature of events at Penn State, but do you feel that the timing was a bit off with the disclosing of the NCAA sanctions? There's a more serious topic or subject in Colorado with 12 dead, dozens more injured. To hell with the sport. I take your point, Michael. I have not. I've been loath in many ways to say much about Colorado because I guess it would fall under the category of why waste my breath. As a culture, speaking of culture, as a culture, this nation's culture has embraced the gun and in such an astonishing, to me, way that you heard the President of the United States and the would-be president, Mitt Romney, on Friday speak to the nation about, their reactions to this shooting, and the word gun was never uttered by either man, I believe. I'm quite sure. And you know why? Well, politics, obviously. But also, if either man, and the one who should have is the president, but if he had, he would have immediately been charged with politicizing a tragedy. Talk about the inability for a culture, for a people, for a community to react in a rational way to the gun violence that is a daily reality of life in the United States. It ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen. There are millions and millions and millions and millions of Americans who look at the founding documents of this nation and who, if they were pushed, would throw everything out and hold on to one little part, and that's the Second Amendment. That's the most important one to them. Their right to have a gun. Now, I can maybe on some levels sort of get in that mindset, but I can't get in the mindset of where that love of the gun has taken us, which is where a reasonable reading of that would be that, yeah, everybody can have what is reasonable to protect themselves and their families, right? How the hell you need assault rifles and weaponry that is simply meant to kill as many people as possible. These are weapons that were created for armies in war. I don't even want to, I don't even want to get started today. There's all this news about the number of rounds of ammunition that this guy was able to acquire absolutely legally. Absolutely legally. He did nothing illegal. Nothing. Until he destroyed all those lives. And believe me, it's more than the 12. Every family of every one of those killed has been irrevocably harmed. Every individual in every family and the friends. Again, the kind of ripple effect of one death. Then, and that the dead are young. And then the knowledge that 9 of the people that are alive are in critical condition and a lot of head wounds leads you to believe that if there's not going to be more deaths, that these people's lives have been destroyed by grievous injury. And that's not even getting into the emotional stuff. But, okay, he did nothing illegal. Nothing. Unhindered by any kind of law that would require a federal maybe background check to kick in when you're purchasing a huge quantity of ammo. We have no such thing. And yes, you could argue that a background check on him wouldn't have done anything because he had no record. He would not have been easily caught. But he had about a 6,000 round arsenal. And again, legally purchased over the internet. Because, guys, the culture that exists in this country, the love of the gun culture, means that we as a people have decided that we prefer to live with a virtual absence of any law that regulates the sale of ammunition. It puts us, believe me, alone in the world. And if you are to look at the stats for, there have been mass shootings in, for instance, Australia, Norway, Britain. There have been in other places, as we know. When those things have happened in those other countries, guess what? There's been reaction and action taken. And generally speaking, there is not a repetition. Here, I don't know what we average a year for these kinds of, where more than 3 people get killed by, a total stranger, blown away or whatever. It happens constantly here. The death toll here from these kinds of crimes is so far and away higher than any other nation on earth. And it is not because the United States of America is home to some extraordinary concentration of lunatics. It's that it is home to a nation of people that refuse to regulate the sale of weapons of mass destruction, be it ammunition or whatever. I mean, it's as easy, you want to have an arsenal, it's as easy as buying a book on Amazon.com. It's easy. I can go do it right now. This jerk in Aurora had bought a high-capacity drum magazine, large enough to hold enough rounds so that he could be expected to fire 50 to 60 rounds in a minute. Thank God that magazine jammed, or God knows what the death toll is that we would be talking about. Sellers are not required to report ammunition sales to law enforcement officials, even if they get an order for some very eyebrow-raising large amount. Some jerk in somewhere wants to buy, 10,000 rounds, something that is so like, what? That you would think you would have to tell some authority? No. This is the US of A. You don't have to. Understand that if you withdraw a certain amount of money from your own account at a bank and it's over what? What is the limit? 10,000, 15,000 or something? They report it. Your bank tells on you to the feds, because it's conceivable that if you need that big hunk of cash, you're up to, no good. But you can buy 500 million rounds of ammo, and no one's reporting you to anybody. Changing cultures. Penn State, America. I don't think the odds are great in either case. Chuck writes some random thoughts. My summer intern, a Penn State student, responded to the sanctions with this comment. Hey, just tell me there'll be football there in the fall. That's all I care about. Seems to me, says Chuck, that will be what most students care about, because football games there are huge social events. Chuck also says the imbalance that the NCAA describes at Penn State exists in every major Division I football program in the country. USC, Michigan, Notre Dame, Alabama. I agree with you. Just pick one. I find it interesting that the NCAA is lecturing Penn State on an imbalance that the NCAA breeds. And finally, in his random thoughts, Chuck says this: the economy of Center County will take a huge hit. Yeah. That's the part that is tough. People who have bet their life savings on that economy are now collateral damage, right? I agree. You look at that creep, Jerry Sandusky, and look what he has wrought. Look what he has wrought. On the other hand, you look at Spanier and the trustees and all those guys in Paterno who did the cover-up, and it's what they brought as well. How many times do we need to see, again, human nature play out, that what gets you is the cover-up? Always. The effort to cover up the crime. From Richard Nixon on, and I'm sure obviously well before Richard Nixon, this is always the mistake that gets made. But I guess we always think it'll be different when we do it, that we'll manage the cover-up. We'll get it done. And you saw in the email that Spanier wrote at one point to Schultz, foreshadowing his greatest fear, which is that if we're found out, this could create a terrible, terrible situation he couldn't even have imagined. Let me take a quick break. Keep giving me your reactions. I love them. And again, also, calls accepted at 412-316-3381.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
The end is near.
Voting ends Sunday in Pittsburgh City Paper's annual Best of Pittsburgh Readers Poll. Vote now and register to win a new iPad. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone at citypapermobile.com.
Gustavo and Vella wants to thank all of southwestern Pennsylvania, the USA, and the world for helping to liberate his native country of Equatorial Guinea. Equatorial Guinea has suffered 43 years of dictatorship, 43 years of human rights abuses, 43 years of corruption, and 43 years of kleptocracy. Even with $5 billion in oil revenue in 2011, the 700,000 citizens of Equatorial Guinea earn less than $2 per day. A proud Mount Lebanon resident, please help Gustavo and Vella usher in the 21st century by allowing freedom, democracy, and socioeconomic prosperity by the rule of law for the next 43 years and beyond. Email him at presidentandvella@yahoo.com to help free Equatorial Guinea.
Get Lynn Cullen Live on your smartphone. Go to citypapermobile.com now for Pittsburgh City Paper's brand new mobile app. Get the latest restaurant reviews, event listings, movie times, and of course, Lynn Cullen Live on your smartphone. citypapermobile.com.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email Lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Okay, we're back, and obviously this is a big story, and you'll be hearing about it ad nauseum. The other big story, and we have not talked about it, and I'm not sure why. I would ask Lynn Cullen why the hell she didn't talk about it, and that would be the local story of the civil trial involving, for God's sakes, excuse me? Thank you, Jordan Miles. Couldn't think of his first name, Jordan Miles. And he took the stand on Friday, and the trial continues today. I don't know. You read some of you read some of that testimony, and it's chilling. It really is chilling. Turns out that after they stuck handcuffs on him, they continued to kick the crap out of him. There's no excuse for that. None. 3 men over 6 feet, all trained, and a kid, 5'7", 5'8", It's if this is, if this is like police procedure, and it's okay, then that's scary. Then I can almost get into the heads of those people who, love the Second Amendment because they're scared of the police. They want to be able to protect themselves from the powers that be in case such a revolution of some sort is necessary. God. I don't know. And while I can't believe that he's not going to win this case, I have to admit I don't know why I think that, when I couldn't believe that the feds and the DA did not feel there was sufficient evidence to criminally charge the police. So I guess in many ways, what do I know? Somebody else pointed out there's only one black person on the jury. And I would argue that that's probably, I think it's not a jury of 12, it's a jury of, I don't know, 7 or 9. It's a reduced size jury, I guess, because in a civil trial, I guess that's possible. And the jurisdiction is Allegheny County, right? So 1 out of 6 or 1 out of 7 or 1 out of 9, 7 or 9, being black would be probably about close to the right percentage of representation, I guess. I don't know. And I don't even know how I should know. In a civil trial, do you need a unanimous verdict by the jury? I'm not sure you do. How come I don't know this stuff? I should, and I probably do know it somewhere in the back of my head, but I have long since forgotten it. So that is something that I suspect we will be talking more about in the coming days. But the Penn State story is the biggie, and the reaction is going to be fascinating. And again, in regard to Colorado, it's the lack of what I would consider reasonable reaction that it keeps me from wanting to talk much about it, because nothing changes. Nothing changes. We Americans are some interesting folks. We can go through these horrific, senseless bloodbaths over and over and over again and never change a damn thing. Never. So that shows you the gutlessness of our politics and our leadership, and it shows you the power of the National Rifle Association. So why trouble ourselves? You know, it comes to so many things. The United States is so off on its own, and often in ways that aren't, to my mind, not indicative of our maturity as a people or as a government, or of our sense of being rational keepers of our security. The government supposedly exists in large part to keep us secure. And there are some who only think of that in terms of secure from foreign people. But I would argue that in the United States, our national security is often threatened most from within. And in regard to the death grip that the NRA and its minions have on our body politic, there is I don't see any reason to hope that there will ever be a change in that, no matter how many innocent people die, no matter how many heartbreaking stories we hear and or read about the latest victims of our insatiable protection of guns, not people, protection of guns. And their right to travel from hand to hand unimpeded. Another instance of America standing alone. And this, too, is... Hang on, Chuck sent me a breaking news thing. Thank you. Penn State just released this. This is by the football coach who has replaced Joe Paterno, Bill O'Brien. What a job that guy's got. Here's his reaction. Today we receive a very harsh penalty from the NCAA, and as head coach of the Nittany Lions, I will do everything in my power to not only comply but help guide the university forward to become a national leader in ethics, compliance, and operational excellence. I knew when I accepted this position that there would be tough times ahead, but I am committed for the long term to Penn State and our student athletes. I was then, and I remain convinced that our student athletes are the best in the country. I could not be more proud to lead this team and these courageous and humble young men into the upcoming season. Together, we are committed to building a better athletic program and university. That's the coach's statement. And yeah, well said. Well said. What's he going to say? I mean, as I said, I think everybody's saying the right things generally. Not this one trustee that I quoted, but they're saying the right things. I really don't know if their heart is in it. Back to what I was talking about. So here's, again, where the United States just stands alone. Alone, folks. Well, not totally. In this one, we're alone with Japan and China. Wonderful. And this has to do with, it's a list of countries that mandate that employers provide men a certain amount of leave when they become fathers. Okay, now, I left out an important word. This is a list of countries in the world that mandate that employers have to let fathers off when they have a child. I mean, if the father wants to be off. The word I left out was paid. So this is a list of countries that pay fathers. They say, we'll continue to pay you, but we want you to be able to stay with your child and, get your kid off to the proper start and bond and all that kind of stuff. And we'll keep your paycheck coming. You just hang out there. And guys, we can't even get our heads around that, right? We stand almost alone in the fact that we do not even do that for mothers. Our Family Leave Act is not about paid leave. The only people who can take maternity leave in this country are people rich enough to not need the paycheck. And as you know, that ain't many people. So we don't even have paid leave for the moms. Listen to the countries that have paid leave for dads. Well, I'm not going to read the list. It'll go on forever, and we don't even have time. But what I'm going to blow you away with is the maximum time that these countries give fathers paid after the birth of a child. Sweden's the most liberal. You're not going to believe this. Over a year. Sweden has paid paternity leave mandated for fathers of 480 days. Okay? But you could say, I know what Americans say. Those Swedes. I mean, these Nordic types. I don't know what it is with them. Okay, fine. Let's get the second highest country in terms of paid parental leave, because this will knock some of your socks off. Germany. Okay, we don't think of Germany as one of those socialistic countries. We think of Germany as like us. This is an industrious nation. These are people who work, and they've got the kind of work ethic Americans have, right? That's why they're on top in Europe. That's why their economy is the engine of Europe. Germany mandates its employers, all employers, to give a father up to 365 days of paid family leave. A year. If you were even trying to get 1 week here, the Chamber of Commerce, the Republic, the Business Association, are you trying to destroy our economy? Okay, well, I'm just pointing out. Germany, 1 year, paid for dads. Paid. And it hasn't destroyed their economy. Next up, to our north, Canada. 245 days paid paternity leave for fathers. You hear Americans say every once in a while, I'm moving to Canada. This would be another reason. After Canada is Australia with 126 days. Then Italy with 90, Norway with 70, Finland. Now we're getting down into what I guess we consider reasonable. Finland, Portugal, Spain, Denmark, Poland, the UK, Kenya, for God's sake, and France all mandate up, like 11 to 18 days. Kenya is more progressive than we are. Kenya understands that you have to allow fathers the ability to, it's beyond belief. Okay, also allowing some paid leave. Belgium, Philippines, Hungary, Brazil, Chile, Uganda, Switzerland, Greece, the Netherlands, Indonesia. Okay? Not just leave, but paid. The United States, 0. Along with China, Japan, and India. The sense that we always do the right thing, that we know what we're doing, can be called into question on so many fronts, and this would be one. This would be a biggie. Oh, man. Unbelievable. No, nothing new there. Okay. So, I think that's it. For me. I've only got a few minutes. Oh, I'll tell you one other quickie thing. I got this notification from the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority. High consumption notification. It says here that your recent meter readings show a significant increase in water consumption. We are notifying you as a courtesy. If you are unaware of any changes in the water consumption that would cause such an increase, we urge you to take action to correct a potential internal problem. You might have a leak. Right. So it's very nice of them, actually. They're saying, wow, all of a sudden, I don't have a leak. I know what this is. This is me trying to keep my flowers alive and the new bushes and trees I planted alive. I have been, watering constantly, because I was told, I just spent a lot of money putting trees and bushes in. And one of them's dying for sure, maybe two. I was trying to protect my investment. And I can't even imagine what my bill's going to be. But, yeah, I know I'm consuming. And I maybe should feel guilty because we're nearing drought conditions, or even are at the sort of minimal drought level around here. But I don't think they've said you can't water your flowers. Have they? I don't think so. So, whatever. Okay, guys, that would be it for today. Tomorrow we'll talk some more. I'm sure we'll talk more about Penn State because there's going to be an awful lot of reaction. And as I said, Jordan Miles might come up, other things as well. And my sister will be joining us, so that might pull us into some other territory. Wednesday, Chris Potter. Thursday, we do not have Tom Sokolowski this week. And Friday, who the hell knows? You have a great day.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.